Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Matt the Hatch with Matt Green. How you doing, Matt?
Yeah, how's it going, Marvin? You watch any football this weekend?
I did. I Confessions of a Cowboys fan. I watched the Cowboys beat the Chargers yesterday.
Oh, I did too, on that game-winning field goal.
Yeah, that's actually unusual for the Cowboys. Usually they miss those.
Yeah. I tell you what, man, Sam Darnold looks pretty good. You know, I don't know what they were feeding him in the Jets, but whatever the Jets were feeding him, they're also feeding Zach Wilson right now. Poor fella.
There you go. Well,
poor fella.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see, if the Panthers can keep it in the road. But we were talking before we started recording, and we mentioned this a little bit, I think, last time we recorded, that we want to talk about October Caddis.
Yeah, man, let's talk about October Caddisflies. And, before we were getting going, I was saying, it's October Caddisfly, the common name for about 17 or 18 species that compose that group, is kind of ironic because they have a wide phenology. They emerge between June and November, depending on the species. The bulk of them emerge between September and October, especially in the trout streams and the mountains throughout the Appalachians. But, kind of interesting. A lot of people think, "Oh, I'm going to go fish October caddisflies." Well, your October caddisflies, in quotes, Marvin, are emerging in June, July, and August. Mostly in little springs and trickles, and there's some in medium to larger streams. These are caddisflies that are in the family Limnophilidae. Some of them make plant cases as larvae. Some make mineral or rock cases. Some make plant and mineral cases. And there's actually a neat evolution in case making within this group. The basal groups, or the primitive case making trait, is rock or mineral, and the more derived or more highly evolved trait or plant case making. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, I work with Pycnopsyche, this genus of October caddisfly, for my own dissertation research. So I could go on and on and on for hours about these guys if you really want to know more. And there are some other genera within Limnophilidae that are, a little bit like October caddisflies, to be honest. These are Ironoquia, and some of the Pseudostenophylaks are a little bit like October caddisflies. These are mineral case-making larvae in the high mountains that are kind of brown, black, or gray in color, that emerge May, June, July, August, September, sometimes into October. But the October caddisflies themselves are, a lot of those species are orange, so they get associated with pumpkin time here in the fall. And there's a theory that they are the color that they are: oranges, light tans, browns. Some species with intricate color patterning. Some of the cells of the wings are darkened, making them look. Some of them are speckled. Some of the cells are more solid with dark coloring in the middle. And then some of the cells have no coloring at all. So they're just completely orange to light tan. And there's a theory that they have this coloring to kind of blend in with the leaves. As the leaves change, get more brown and orange, they're safer from predators that way because they're camouflaging amongst the leaf detritus next to the river or the creek that they emerge from.
Yeah, which is a good thing, right? Because they're a pretty big bug.
Oh, they are. They are. Most of them averaging between an 8 to a 10, sometimes as small as a 12. The females being a little bit larger than the males. They're just packed full of bags in their abdomen. And really, after they emerge, they're alive, hanging streamside for a couple of days to a week, and they've got one thing on the mind, and that's to procreate. And once they do that, they don't really live for very much longer after that. but they tend to come off in waves, Marvin. Most of the species will emerge for about 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks in any given area, with the adults hanging around for a week or so, coming off in waves, emerging late into the night. We're talking 10, 11 o'clock. It's fall when the bulk of these species are emerging. Mostly the Pycnosphyce liquolenta, the Pycnosphyce so-and-so. These are stick case makers as larvae with 2 ballast sticks on either end of a flattened plant case that has a tube. Think of it just as a long cylinder with 2 sticks on the side. And these guys are found throughout most of our mountains. That they emerge 10, 11 o'clock at night, and as they emerge, they're actually kind of a light tan, a very light orange without much marking. And this is what we call teneral individuals. So when you're fishing emergence, you really want to fish these October caddisflies with more lighter wing pattern than you would later adult. I mean, you can fish the adult during the day and kind of prod banks, river banks, where these caddisflies are going to be flying around. That's a good move. If you're actually fishing emergence, and these are all brave souls more than doing this, fall temp, it's a little cool when the bulk of these guys are coming off. So you got to be willing to kind of stay around and brave the mid, lower 50s, upper 40s. And the caddisflies will still come off until about, 45, 48 degrees is about when they stop emerging. But, they'll come off up until about those temps, air temps, not talking water temps. But at that point, water temps are really kind of mimicking air temps for the most part. When we get into the fall, water starts to really cool off a good bit. The most species-rich place for Pycnosphyce, these October caddisflies I've ever seen, is actually the Davidson River, where as many as 7 or 8 species are found. And kind of incredible. Some of our streams in western North Carolina just have an incredible diversity of these guys. And then as you move further up the Appalachian chain, places into West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Vermont, New Hampshire, all have thick populations of these caddisflies. There are some that are only in spring. These are the Pycnosphyce gentilis throughout the Appalachians, and then Gentilis inflavata, and a new species called Latova. Mostly in small springs throughout the mountains, although the Gentilis species can be found all the way into the Piedmont of the southeast. And these caddisflies have as adults, they have wings that are all one color, typically a light orange, and they're stone case makers in the final larval instar developmental phase. And then you have some species with just a couple little dots on the end margin of the wing. These are Lepida, subfasciata in Indiana. Typically, in our neck of the woods, Marvin, subfasciata in Indiana tend to be in the coastal plain. In the Piedmont with Lepida in those regions, and the mountains size is about the same as those Gentilis fulvata and Latova. And we're all talking those Gentilis caddisflies and their sister species are a good 8 or 10. And you can fish them with a CDC wing, like we've talked about in the past, Marvin, with a thick tapered body, typically an orange or a light to dark tan. It always will work well. One of the species I've seen that tends to be darker are these Pycnosphyce gutifera, and those are by far the largest of the adults. Those are a solid 8, or an oversized or overtied number 10. And those caddisflies range anywhere from Minnesota down the Mississippi into Tennessee, up the Tennessee River Basin, into Tennessee, and then into the Ohio drainage, into Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New York, and then down the New from the Ohio into Virginia, North Carolina, and then South Carolina and Georgia, in the upper end of the Chattooga River drainage. Tend to be associated with mountain habitats and colder water or cool water habitats of the Cumberland Plateau in Tennessee, and then into Ohio. And then really another very widespread species is Pycnosphyces scabripennis. These are plant case makers as larvae, and the adults are about a size 10 to an 8, but they have speckled wings. Really tough to imitate. Not so sure that the trout and other fishes that key in on these species really care all that much about wing patterning in the scabripennis group, but definitely something to keep in mind. This species ranging all the way from the southeast through the northeast, out into Arkansas, in Missouri, not really up in the upper Midwest, and then into the main Ohio River Basin, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, not really found through there is abundant.
That's pretty neat. And when I think about October caddis, I think about swinging soft hackles.
Oh, you can. But I'm telling you, on rivers where they're most abundant, these are medium to larger sized rivers with lots of leaf detritus. The larvae eat leaf detritus. The larvae are really fishable as larvae in January, February, March, April, sometimes in May. Then the larvae go into a resting phase. They get up in root wads along the riparian edges of rivers and streams, and some of them probably get way, way, way up in there and group together, and that will help them as they emerge find mates. Right after they emerge, they group together that way as larvae. It increases survival in the adult phase. So after May, in May, June, and July, and parts of August, these predominant species, Scabripennis, Caddisflies, gentilis, and then liquilenta, and so, they're not really fishable to the fly fishermen. And that's something people don't really realize. You can fish the larvae hard, March, April, and then before that, February and January. But summer, not that good. is not that good. As the adults for most of these species begin to emerge in bulk in September, October, once the temps drop, you can fish soft hackles, but you almost have just as much success as prodding riverbanks and underbrush, under tree limbs and things like that, where the adults are resting and occasionally fall in. Most adult mating occurring in vegetation with the females, then egg laying sometime in the evening. Of course, as we talked about earlier, emergence happening throughout the night, as with most any large insect. That's a behavior that deeply conserved within the lineage of this group to avoid predators by emerging at night. You decrease your risk of being eaten. Still, we have good high fish populations. They will feed on these things throughout the night. And and in some places it's as thick as hexagenia. Now, I've been a part of some really good Pycnosphyces emergence events, kind of short-lived, just going for a couple of days, and you really have to get lucky and just be in the right spot at the right time that it happens. And it's fun. It's kind of that last shot of fishing for the season, that last big punch besides the trico in many places throughout the Northeast especially.
Yeah, and so on the dry fly front, are you fishing big bushy stimulators or something like that, or do you have a different dry fly pattern you like?
Oh, I'm fishing my big CDC pattern. So you tie in approximately 3 to 4 feathers of CDC. You can include the stems, mostly using the light tan or ginger. I think it's 043 color code for hairline dubbing. Typically use that for the wing color for many of the species, although you might want to go darker based on what you see around you that match the emergence, so to speak, more than. And then use a dubbing loop tool to spin a dubbing body. As I talked about earlier, this could be light orange to tan to brown, depending on the species that you're trying to imitate. And some of these creeks are going to have easily 3 or 4. And they're going to be receiving species from springs. For example, a medium to large size stream here in the southern Appalachians will probably have a healthy population of so-and-so liquilenta. These are kind of tan to light brown wings with kind of tan, light tan, or light orange body, depending on, there's definitely some phenotypic variation or different variation between streams, but that's pretty typical. In a size 10 or an 8. And then they might also have one of these speckled wing pattern species that I talked about, Scabripinus, some of those coming in. And maybe some gentilis, the species with wings that are all tan or light orange. But those species are really going to be coming in from springs. The bulk of what you're going to see are the detrital plant case makers. And in some of our streams in western North Carolina are going to have Gyrtifera. Similar color wing to so-and-so and liquilenta, but with a little bit more extensive patterning. And because that species is so widespread throughout the central and eastern United States, I'll be sure to give you a picture of that one that you can use to put on this post, Morgan, so people will get a good idea and kind of look at what I'm talking about with wing patterns species.
Got it. And, folks, we love questions at the Articulate Fly. You can email them to us or send them to us on our Facebook or Instagram page. And Matt and I would love to answer, any questions you have about insects in your neck of the woods. I don't know if you have an idea, Matt, what you want to talk about next time. So maybe give people a heads up, because I know we asked folks to kind of look around and see, gosh, do you have an October caddis question? But
yeah, give it some thought, Morgan. One thing I will say about patterns, these patterns don't necessarily need to be all that much. They don't need to be complex. Really, it's about size, color, and then ability to float well. If you can get those 3 things with the October caddisfly, you'll be in good shape. This, as I said earlier, most of the fishing is going to be at night. 10, 11 o'clock, and you need to have a headlight with a good red light on it, so you can see where to cast, be efficient, and just make sure your fly is floating. Color and size still does, especially size, still does matter at that point, even during night fishing. But making sure the fly is floating, it means all the difference. And you still want to be drag free. Don't be scared to use 5X. So, I think most people will be off. I can't see. I'm going to get hit in the limbs. I need 4X. I need 3. The fish doesn't care. It's feeding at night. I don't know about that with these bug eaters for nighttime fishing, especially brown trout. They're still a little picky. A great place, couple great places in the southeast to go give this a try. I think more than a lot of people probably a little hesitant to even go give it a try. Some great places in the southeast to go give it a try here over the next at least 2-3 weeks. Upper Chattooga around the South Carolina, Georgia line, the Davidson in North Carolina. I know they had that big flood, but the fish are still there, folks. Just, they're there. Parts of the Upper French Broad, the North Fork of the French Broad, the Tow River drainage, parts of the Upper Watauga in the Boone area, even the Upper New River streams over in the Little River drainage coming out of Great Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. Any of the smaller creeks in the Cherokee National Forest area, maybe Rocky Fork, maybe Indian Creek over in Unicoi County. The list could go on. Upper West Fork of the Pigeon, just upstream of Waynesville, a good 20, 15 minutes. Really looking at more your high elevation stuff. Fitness Psyche are larger earlier in the season, fall season for them, getting progressively smaller as they start to emerge out towards the coast. Later in October, really start to look for some coastal fishing, especially for the Scabropinus group and Blackwater system. They're highly abundant. Indiana, this other October Caddisflies, a good bit smaller. Sorry, Marvin, we didn't really talk about these, but the coastal plain Fitness Psyche tend to be smaller, and we're talking about 12, maybe even 14, like that small. And so they do get smaller, just that the mountain species in mountain populations, in particular, the same species that you might find out in the coastal plain, those in the mountains are just a good bit larger on average.
Got it. Well, folks, you owe it to yourself to get out there and give it a try, because we're going to have good October caddis fishing for, I don't know, what the next 3 to 4 weeks, right, Matt?
Oh, yeah, man. I think the fall is coming on a little fast. I don't think it's going to get super cold that quick. So we should have a good, prolonged season here for the next couple of weeks. And based on what I've heard from some other folks, too, supposed to have really good fall colors throughout the mountains and the Piedmont. So definitely get out there, have yourself a time, think about stuff we've talked about. You can certainly go back and re-listen to our podcast and take a few notes, something that you think might be informative for you. I know there's a lot of information that's thrown out to you, but really just take a step back and say, okay, how can I use just a couple of bits and pieces of this information to be successful? What can I take from it? Yeah. And that's stuff I really want to hear from listeners. What do you want to hear me talk about? How well is some of the information received? And, if you're listening to this and it's going one ear and out the other, what do we do? What do we need to do to improve your utilization of the information on the water? Give me some feedback. It's always nice to know, because, the reason I do these, Morgan, folks, I'm not paid big bucks for anything to do it. I just come on the goodness of my heart to share the information with you to improve your fishing success. So if there's anything I can do to help you, let me know.
There you go, folks. Send it to us on our Facebook or Instagram page, shoot us an email, or reach out to Matt directly. Hope you guys have a great time on the water. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Matt.
Tight lines, Marvin. Happy fall. It's coming.